Hello everybody and welcome to Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today we're going to be taking a look at my first impressions of the Black Bolt and White Flare set. We have had all the cards for about a week now. The cards released yesterday in Japan, so we've already started getting some City League data in and thought it was about time for us to do a first impressions of the full set. We will be doing all of our set reviews and all of that good stuff once NAIC is out of the way, but wanted to do a first impressions to kick things off. And we're going to start with the trainers as always. Obviously, this is two different sets being combined into one. Well, actually, it's not being combined into one for the first ever time, which is really interesting. We've never really had anything like this as like a Western release before, so that's really cool. But both of these sets are being released on the same day. They're going to be legal for Worlds, so yeah, this is definitely there's definitely some important cards to take note of, ready for the World Championships. So yeah, we're going to kick off with the trainers of Black Bolt, then we're going to do the trainers of White Flare, and then we'll do all of the Pokemon from those two sets. Kicking things off with Energy Coin. I think this is a really weak one, flipping 2 coins. With either of them are tails, you don't get an effect, is very weak. The effect is obviously really strong, but a card that's only going to work 75% of the time, or 25% of the time, is just never going to make it into decks, realistically. Antique Cover Fossil is actually a reprint, I believe. We got a copy of this back in Stellar Crown, so that's nothing new. Similarly, Poker Gear is a reprint, but it does get the eye regulation, so it does stay legal going forward. Whereas the Professor's Research reprint does not get a new regulation mark, so we could be in an era without Research, Boss, and Iono come next year. Very interesting concept. Air Balloon is the first really interesting card. It's a tool card that says the retreat cost this Pokemon this card is attached to is 2 colourless less. This is also a reprint, and it was actually a really important card back when it was first released, and I think it's still going to have a lot of good impact right now. We have a lot of bench-hitting Pokemon. There's all sorts of different things that just sit on the bench and often have 2 retreat and are a bit of a liability because of it. The biggest one that jumped out to us is Zoroarch EX. Zoroarch is obviously a fantastic draw engine, but can be a bit of a liability because it has that 2 retreat, so just having an option to be able to make your Zoroarch's retreat for free is really, really powerful. There's also things like Dubwool, which hasn't seen too much play because it's always a bit of a liability when it comes into play. Arbok is another one that obviously likes to go in and out of the active. I don't think there's going to be like huge amounts of applications outside of things like Zoroarch. I think Zoroarch is by far the best of these, but I think there's a lot of other cards that you actually can start to consider because we have Air Balloon in format now and not just Rescue Board. So yeah, it's never going to be like a card that's in huge counts, but whilst we're still playing Arven engines, especially given that a lot of the Zoroarch decks are like Arven Evolution engines, Air Balloon fits in perfectly. It means that you have a pivot, it means that your draw engine potentially can't get trapped if you play one. Maybe you could even play 2 of these just to make sure both of your Zoroarchs, if you've got a couple down, do have free retreat. But similarly, you could just stick an Air Balloon on one, attach an energy on another if you have a spare turn to attach an energy card, and then you're kind of, you've kind of got that pseudo retreat because you only need to attach one energy to the other one as well. So yeah, really, really cool card. Nothing too flashy, but I think it's going to make an impact in Zoroarch decks for sure. End Plot is a new supporter card that says move up to 2 energy from your bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon. This is almost a complete reprint of Poppy, which has done absolutely nothing. This is a little bit more flexible. This comes from 2 of your Pokemon, but has to go to your active Pokemon, so the energy can be split up if you want them to. I guess one of the only real things I could think about when thinking about this card was Teal Mask Ogerpon being able to attach 2 energy with Teal Dance, and then Ends Plot them to the active and attach a 3rd. But yeah, super weak use case. Don't really need I don't really see any decks being able to use it like that. So yeah, not the most powerful of cards for sure. And similarly, Fennel heals 40 damage from each of your Pokemon. We already have the Picnic Basket, which is actually seeing a little bit of niche play here and there to deal with Monkey Dories, to deal with Dragapult damage, to deal with even some decks that have a particularly weak Froslass-Monkey Dory matchup. So there's lots of spread in the format right now. Monkey Dory is in all sorts of different archetypes, so there is a little bit of use for things like Picnic Basket, but that's a supporter. This is a supporter card, whereas that's an item card. Being able to still use your supporter card is going to be really important. The extra heal for 10, I don't think is impactful enough. The fact that you're healing your opponent's board can actually sometimes be annoying if you're also trying to do Monkey Dory stuff on your side of the board. But typically the decks that are playing that Picnic Basket aren't going to be playing with decks that play Munkidori themselves, so you're not actually too bothered about them healing off of their Pokemon, and a lot of the time it actually can help you because it means there's less damage on their board to try and Munkidori onto you. So yeah, actually the heal of their board can be an upside sometimes. So this just healing your own Pokemon and doing an extra 10 heal isn't really good enough, I think, to warrant playing your support for the turn or playing a card in your deck just to do that. And then finally we have Prism Energy. This is another reprint. This was a fantastic energy back when it was released in the black and white days, and I'm super, super happy to see it back because I think it's just a really, really nice energy. Does push basic Pokemon, which is, you know, something that some people like, something that some people don't like. I don't mind basic formats too much. You know, arguably we're not even in a basic format right now that like 3 of the top decks are evolution-based decks. So, not even evolution, stage 2 based decks. So it's not even like we're in a basic format right now, but this does push basics a little bit. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a really cool card. I love seeing more Rainbow Energy. One of my favorite decks that we've played for, or have been able to play from Destined Rivals, has been the like Armarouge Ho-Oh deck. This is definitely an upgrade for those decks because you get to play some attackers that take multiple Rainbow Energy potentially now. At the moment, only playing Luminous and Legacy means you can only ever attack with one typed energy cost and the rest has to be colorless. Well, now with Prism Energy, this opens the door to so many other attackers for a deck like that, which is fantastic. And then you can also play a couple of it's just increasing the amount of Rainbow Energy in your deck as well, so you can play a couple of Luminous alongside it for some of those attackers that only have one coloured energy in their attack cost. So yeah, it's just an overall improvement for that deck, which is been one of my favourite decks to play lately. So really pleased to see that. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really flexible card. It was very, very strong back in the day when it was first released, and I'm really pleased to see it back. I think there's a lot of uses for a lot of different basic Pokemon that maybe couldn't be used before, couldn't really be considered before, that maybe we can now try out. Yeah, it's just a really, really nice card to have. We get an Energy Retrieval reprint, always nice to have, but not too impactful. Tool Scrapper is actually huge. It's a very, very impactful card. It was very good back when in both of its tenures that it's been in the format, and it's still really important now. Obviously, being able to discard things like Bravery Charms, Capes, all of that kind of stuff is really important. Worth noting that right now we actually have a real lack of ways of interacting with tools. We have Jamming Tower, which is good, and some decks are playing. But there's a lot of other stadiums right now that people want to play. Artisan, all of the Rockets decks want to play the Rocket Engine, the Rockets Factory Stadium. Some decks are playing things like the Gravity Mountain. So having a non-stadium way of being able to interact with tools is good. Being able to discard your own tools at times can have some or can be a positive effect at times. And also this just being an item means it's so much more searchable by things like Arven as well. So yeah, very, very important. And then obviously the only other way we have is Ruffian, and absolutely no one is playing Ruffian other than some controlling archetypes. So yeah, this is just going to give more universal, more accessible interaction with tools, which I think is always important. It does make things like the Bravery Charms and stuff worse. It's a bit annoying for the decks that like to try and have that survivability aspect to them, but still, I think it's probably a positive to have, because otherwise, tanking and then healing can be a bit of an annoying strategy to play against. So having an element of interaction in that is going to be important, I think. We have another copy of Plume Fossil. I can't remember whether we've already had an Archeops line in Scarlet and Violet, but either way, yeah, not really going to be impactful enough. The fossil mechanic is so weak, I don't think it's ever going to be worth playing these. We have Brave Bangle. This is a new tool card that says the attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to, excluding Pokemon with a rule box, deal 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX. So this is basically a one prize choice belt, essentially. All your one prize Pokemon are going to be able to use the Brave Bangle and have a permanent Defiance belt against the EX Pokemon, which is really cool. I like pushing single prize Pokemon so that we have an element of single prize and an element of multi prize in our formats. I love formats where there's lots of different archetypes there's some single prize attackers, there's some 2 prize attackers. When we get to Megas, we'll have some 3 prize attackers. I actually really like formats when there's lots of different ways decks can be built and stuff like that. So yeah, really pleased to see them trying to push single prize Pokemon. I'm a huge fan of Ethan Cyphlosion, and I think this is an upgrade for that, which is great because one of the biggest things about Ethan Cyphlosion is it just falls a little bit short with its damage, so being able to just get over the line and not have to rely on a supporter, or things like Defiance Belt, or having to have your Ace spec be Max Belt is really, really good. There's not a huge amount of other things that I can see this being used for immediately. I think the one that stood out to me was Typhlosion, but just the existence of this card means that any single prize deck going forward has an immediate buff into the EX Pokemon, which is really powerful and really important to, I guess, not just have EXs take over the format. This could be good for, like, this is another one. This is another card that also helps some Pokemon get over the line in terms of hitting for weakness. So we have the Rocket Spidops, which already does knock out a Charizard and a Grimmsnarl in one shot if you have a full bench. But with Brave Bangle, you can have one less Pokemon on your board to be able to have to do that, which is nice. And all of those little niche things like that is always nice to think about. So yeah, it's just really good to see some focus on single prize Pokemon, I guess, and trying to keep them, I guess, competitive with the multi-prize stuff. We've got Clown, which is a new supporter, which I think is hilarious. Both players shuffle their hands into the deck, and then they both flip a coin. If the and then you flip a coin. If it's heads, you draw 5 and they draw 3. If it's a tails, you draw 3, they draw 5. This is obviously terrible. This is really, really not good, but I do think at least it's quite a funny art. And the full art, which I don't have on the website, but the full art is definitely funny as well. We've got a Sharon reprint, which is not going to have too much impact. But a supporter that is going to have a big impact is Hilda. This is a really, really cool supporter. I really like it. Search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and an energy card. Reveal them and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. To me, this is basically an upgraded Colress's Tenacity, because I care way more about being able to find evolution Pokemon than I do being able to find stadiums. So for me, this is like Colress's Tenacity, but better. Which is great, because there were times when Colress was already played. Admittedly, it was in decks where you wanted to find stadiums specifically. So I don't think this necessarily overtakes the decks that played Colress because they're trying to find stadiums themselves, like specifically. But I think this is more universal. I think there's going to be more decks that try and play this because every deck has Pokemon. And I guess not every deck has evolution Pokemon, but a lot of decks have evolution Pokemon. So yeah, I think this is a really nice one-off supporter. Maybe even a couple of these could make it into the deck. Similar to, Jax or Brock's Grits, these decks that, or these supporters that come into decks when maybe you're trying to have a strategy to deal with Budget and other item lock style decks, or whether you just want additional ways of searching for your Pokemon. And the fact you get an energy as well is really nice, because you can get a special energy. And we've already talked about Prism. Obviously, there's a handful of other good special energy right now, but there's also this Ignition energy, which is the next card I'll talk about, which is very important for evolution Pokemon. It can only be attached to evolution Pokemon. So this is kind of a perfect combo. You search for an evolution Pokemon and then the Ignition energy, which you can attach that very turn and get sort of an attacking combo and attacking threat all in one turn. So yeah, I think this is definitely a card that will see some play. I really like it. I love this style of card. I like search cards. I like cards that let you find specific targets on specific turns. So yeah, I think Hilda's going to be very, very impactful. And again, it's another one that I think for Stage 2 decks, they're going to be really happy to see. Think about how low of a energy count Dragapult plays. It plays sometimes only 7 energy, sometimes even less, sometimes 6. So being able to search for, Dracloak or Dragapult and an energy card, could even be Neo Upper, so you can, be able to power up a Dragapult in one turn. I just think there's a lot of flexibility to this card. So yeah, this is actually probably my favourite supporter of the set. I think it's really cool and super excited to see people implementing this one into their decks. And then the final trainer/energy card is Ignition Energy. If this card is attached to one of your Pokemon, you discard it at the end of the turn. It provides a single colourless while attached, but if it's attached to an evolution Pokemon, it provides 3 colourless instead. So any evolution Pokemon that cares about dealing damage or dealing amount of damage and scaling their damage with the amount of energy attached to them, this is fantastic. This is really good. This is a plus 60, plus 90, depending on their multiplier, which is very powerful. But also, there's a couple of attackers, even in this set, but there's a couple of attackers we already have, which have one type of energy, and then 3 colorless energy as their attack cost, and this fulfills that requirement in one attachment. Yes, you have to discard it, but you're able to quite quickly ramp into what's usually a very powerful attack if it costs 4 energy. You're able to ramp into that attack quite quickly and try and put some pressure on, try and gain some tempo that way. So yeah, very powerful energy. I think it's going to see some play in some certain archetypes. I'm going to talk about one in particular in a moment. But I think, again, it's another energy card that I'm really pleased to see, because we've had the Prism energy to push basic decks. Now we've got the Ignition energy to try and push evolution decks. and I just feel like everyone's kind of got something from this set. So yeah, it's a nice energy to be paired with the Prism energy that's in the set, and we can like both styles of decks can get some benefit from this. So yeah, very, very cool. On some Pokemon then, and the first is Serperior EX. This is one of those Pokemon that does have 3 colorless in their attack cost, so it could make use of Ignition Energy. It's a 320 HP grass type, with the Royal Share ability that says attacks used by your Pokemon do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. It does stack, so if you have multiple Serperiors on the board, you're getting a plus 20, plus 40, plus 60 even. But obviously this is a Stage 2, so it's quite a lot of effort to get this into play. There have been a couple of Stage 2s that have similar abilities in the past, and they've not been massively impactful because the amount of effort you have to put into getting them into play isn't really worth the damage mod. But it is at least a nice thing to have, especially when you buff your own damage. So Grass Order for 4 energy deals 170 damage rather than 150, which is enough to one-shot a Grimmsnarl, is enough to one-shot a Charizard, which is good. And then you also may search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them into your hand. So this is the exact same attack as Charizard and Braixen, the Tag Team EX or Tag Team GX, I should say, from Cosmic Eclipse, which did see some play. There was a couple of decks that played it. It was part of the Mewtwo archetype. It was part of its own sort of standalone deck, but that was a basic Pokemon. You've got to go through a lot of effort to set this up to then be able to get the benefit of searching for 3 cards per turn. Searching for 3 cards per turn is brilliant. You're able to set up your following turn. You're able to try and force Ionos, Judges, all of that kind of stuff out of the opponent earlier on in the game, so that they're less impactful, or they have less access to them in the later game. Or you can carry on your turn as you wish because your opponent doesn't shuffle your hand. So it's a very powerful attack. But I think the fact it's a Stage 2 really, I guess, is what hinders this. You can use Ignition Energy, and I think that's one of the only ways you'll be able to reliably set this up. You can even search for the Ignition Energy for the following turn, which is quite nice. And I think it'll be like it'll be a relatively fine self-sufficient archetype. It will kind of feed itself. The fact that you search for 3 cards means that you're always able to keep up trying to get the next Serperior going and things like that. I guess you could pair this with Yanmega as well. That's another way you could power up the Grass Order attack. But again, then you're playing a Stage 1 and a Stage 2. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be powerful enough. It's kind of slow as a Stage 2. It was only really because it was a basic Pokemon that the attack was so powerful on Breakzard, but still worth noting nonetheless. Realistically, there's not too many other exciting grass Pokemon. The Carablast can evolve if you have a Shelmet in play from turn 1. Dangerous Reaction is close to having dealing enough damage to one-shot, so maybe you can get it over the line with some Special Energy against things like Grimmsnarl and not Special Energy, Special Conditions. So you can get this over the line into a one-shot with things like I don't know, I guess the best way is probably burning something, maybe with a Volcanion. It sounds kind of clunky, but it is technically, I guess, a way of being able to potentially one-shot a Grimmsnarl or a Charizard if you're able to get some residual damage from the Special Conditions. Chandela has a really cool attack. I don't think it's going to be powerful enough, but Explosive Flame Pillar does 150 if you have at least 10 basic fire energy in your discard pile for just 1 energy. Pretty cool attack because all of the Litwick line tries to discard energy. The Lampent discards an energy from itself. Litwick lets you look at the top card of your deck and you may discard it. So quite a cool inter-synergistic line, but again, not really going to be powerful enough, I don't think. Volcarona has the Scorching Scales ability that says you may discard a basic energy from your hand during your turn in order to leave your opponent's active Pokemon burned. There you go. Maybe that's what you're going to pair with the Amoonguss. Again, don't think it's going to be powerful enough though. I think Volcanion is just better because you don't have to be playing Fire Energy or discarding Fire Energy or anything like that. And it's not a Stage 1, so yeah, it's a little bit weaker than Volcanion for me. Seismatode, the whole Seismatode has the round attack. Round is an attack that used to be, that was printed once upon a time, that actually wasn't amazing, but it wasn't terrible. I have friends that actually took the round deck to some very, very high, very, very important tournaments. So it's a bit of a fan favourite. You do 20 damage or 40, or in Seismatode's case, 70 damage for each of your Pokemon in play that has the round attack. So if you've got 4 Pokemon in play with round, you can actually deal 280 damage for just, again, I'm going to say an Ignition Energy. That's going to be the easiest way to set this up. For just an Ignition Energy, not bad on a single prizer, to be honest. When you add in that Brave Bangle, that's 310. That's knocking out a Gardevoir in one turn, in one hit. Still have to get over the line for Dragapult and Charizard, but and Grimmsnarl, but still, it's a pretty decent modifier. And if you're able to find a way of getting one of these Timpoles or Palpitoads into play, or Seismatodes, I guess, into play, without having to evolve them up, so you can get to the point where you have 5 in play. I'm not sure whether we have anything in format that lets you do that. There may be ways of putting basics onto your bench. I can't really remember, or not basics, putting evolution Pokemon. I think we have a Kingdra that does that. There you go. Maybe you could play Kingdra and get some Palpitoads and Seismatodes out. You can get up to like 350 damage, but again, all sounds like way too much effort for what it's worth. I think the best way is just trying to keep it simple with the Seismatode line, trying to make use out of Ignition Energy, and yeah, trying to make use out of dealing 280 for just one attachment. Don't really think it's going to be powerful enough, but yeah, worth noting at least. Tirtouga has the Ancient Debris attack. Another attack, another homage to an older attack. This is obviously Trasher Launch, but on a 30 times multiplier rather than a 20 times, which is, I think, necessary for the way HP is scaled since Trasher Launch was in format. But unfortunately, because this is not just a regular stage 1, it's a fossil Pokemon, I think it's actually going to be too slow. The fossil mechanic is so weak right now. There's no great ways of searching out for the fossils. You can use things like Arven and stuff, but it's not the same as being able to Poffin out 2 basics and then Nest Ball another one or anything like that. They're much harder to find, so I think that's actually what's going to hold this back from being powerful. We know the attack is a good attack. We know it basically pretty much dominated a format for the whole time while it was about. So I think realistically it would be silly to not think about whether this card can have impact, and maybe people will find that it is worth playing the scuffed fossil mechanic just to be able to play Tirtouga. I mean, at the end of the day, we do have a lot of items right now. We've got a huge amount of ball searching format, which is really important. We've got a huge amount of ways, a lot of our ways of searching energy and all of that kind of stuff is all of our recovery and things like that. All of it is item based. But this comes out at a weird time because Budju is obviously a very, very relevant Pokemon, so people are looking at ways of being able to get their evolutions out, get their energy out, all of this kind of stuff, outside of using items with things like some of the supporters like Jack and Brock, like I've mentioned, or TM Evo. So it comes out at a weird time where people are kind of aware of just having a purely item-based engine anyway, and maybe trying to move away from that, trying to have other options in their deck. So there's argument that actually Tirtouga wouldn't be as powerful right now because people are already conscious of their item usage. So yeah, I don't think it's going to actually see too much impact. I'm really glad we got a nod to it. I'm surprised it wasn't on the Garbodor, but again, maybe they wanted to not just make it only a Garbodor thing, or this at least does it keep it in check because it's capped by a fossil mechanic that is way weaker than just evolving. So I guess this is a way of also keeping the attack in check as well. So I think this is a good way to print it, and it'll be interesting to see whether decks, if any decks, do adopt trying to play Tirtouga and play this fossil mechanic just because that attack we know is so powerful. The Caracosta also does have the Mighty Shell ability that prevents any damage and effects from Pokemon with Special Energy attached to them. We do have a few Special Energy in format right now, but we also have a handful of decks that do not play Special Energy at all. They're just focused on the like high acceleration of basic energy. So this is never going to completely wall a format. And again, when it's behind a fossil mechanic, it's not going to be particularly powerful either. The Alamola is quite interesting. This Gentle Fin's ability, I don't think is going to be anything other than a control tool, potentially. Once you're in your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may put a basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less from your discard pile onto your bench. It could be a way of trying to cycle some of these annoying control Pokemon that we've seen, things like Mimikyus and Klefkis and all of that kind of stuff, so that you can keep trying to get them onto the board and then just retreat into them with with like a rescue board on the Alamola and things like that. But again, I don't think it's really going to be powerful enough. It's too slow, and the fact it has to be in the active spot means that it only probably comes into effect after something's been knocked out. So it's not really going to have a big impact in the evolution decks and things like that. We have already a lot of ways of being able to recover. We have Night Stretcher, we have Super Rod, we have lots of different ways of being able to recover a Pokemon anyway. So I think this is only for decks that really want to try and make use of some important basics like Mimikyu or Klefki over and over and over and over again. And even then, it might be better just to have a higher count of Night Stretches and things like that instead. Kyurem is unfortunately way too weak. It's definitely the weakest of the three of the legendaries. Electric, however, is not weak at all. It's actually a complete reprint, I believe, of the Noble Victories version. Dynamotor, stating once during your turn, you may attach a Lightning Energy from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. We know how powerful this ability is. We've seen it on Electric in the past. We've seen it on Flaffy. We're seeing it again on Electric. There's one more that's had. I'm sure there's one other Pokemon that's had it. Let me know in the comments if there is. Can't remember what it is, but I'm sure there is one other Pokemon that's had it. But yeah, we know how powerful this is. Just passive energy acceleration is always really good. We know we can search this out easily. Miraidon was in the format when Flaffy was in the format, and Miraidon often played a 1-1 Flaffy line. I don't see any reason why Miraidon won't start playing at least a 1-1 Electric line, because you're able to find the basic really easily. You're able to then just have constant passive energy acceleration for some very, very sort of costly attacks at times. Things like Iron Hands is amp you very much, costs 4 energy. There's a lot of the lightning attacks that cost 3 lightning energy specifically, so you can't even get around them. Get around trying to set them up with, Joltik being a way to attach additional energy because they need 3 lightnings. So yeah, I think this can definitely see play in Miraidon. Wouldn't surprise me to potentially even see play in the Joltik box. Arguably, this could actually just push Miraidon back to not playing Joltik and it not being a Joltik box deck, and it going back to just being a pure Electric Miraidon style archetype where that's your energy acceleration, and that's how you try and ramp into some of these attacks instead. So yeah, very, very powerful, and really powerful when paired with what Joe and I think is the best card in the set. This is Zekrom EX. Voltage Burst is just absolutely bananas. It deals 130 damage for 3 energy, which already is dealing with a lot of 1-prize Pokemon. Very, very nice. But it deals 50 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. That's a better modifier than Charizard EX, which is already a card that we know is fantastic, and that's a stage 2. This is a basic, and after 3 prizes, you're dealing 280 damage for 3 energy, whereas Charizard would only be dealing 240. So actually, it's a better modifier than Charizard in the late game. It's a basic Pokemon. It can reach higher heights than Charizard. It can actually reach 380 damage if your opponent's taken 5 prizes, which is just absurd. Yeah, this card is absolutely phenomenal. It's easy to search out with Miraidon. It's only 3 energy, so it's actually not that difficult to power up because we still have Electric Generator as well. So between generators and Electric, we have loads of ways of being able to power this up. It's good, realistically, it's good as soon as your opponent's taken 2 prizes because it's going to be dealing 230, which KOs things like Fez, all of these bench-sitting 2-prize basic Pokemon, but can easily reach into Stage 2 Pokemon once your opponent's taken 4 prizes, and can knock out anything in the format if they've taken 5. So yeah, this is basically a basic Charizard EX with a better with better acceleration, or with just as good acceleration, because I guess Charizard accelerates to itself. So its acceleration is just as good because there's multiple ways to accelerate to it, and it's easier to set up because it's a basic, and it has better multiplier, higher heights, better way of really easy to search out. Doesn't have to be put into play. Can just sit on the bench and you can just slowly attach to it, and it's just this this looming threat that's going to be easily able to close out a game. But I could even see a couple of Zekrom being able to take 6 prizes very, very handily. So yeah, by far, for me, the best card in the set. We've already seen from the early Japanese results over the past couple of days that this is having an impact, to be honest. So yeah, I think Zekrom is fantastic, and can't wait to add it back into Miraidon and potentially see how that looks. Melo X has a really interesting ability, has the live premiere ability. that says this Pokemon can attack on your first turn going first. So because with Live Premiere, you can actually essentially use TM Evo turn 1, which is really powerful. It makes getting into your evolutions on turn 2, your stage 2 evolutions on turn 2, very, very likely. You don't have to find rare candy or anything like that. We've already seen decks going second, like to use TM Evo to be able to then, on their second turn, be able to evolve into a stage 2 Pokemon and start attacking. So this is essentially doing the same as that, but you get to go first. I will say this is a 2 prize Pokemon that you have to leave in the active spot. It's a 200 HP 2 prize Pokemon, so it's not got the highest HP for basic EXs, and you still have to find your TM Evo and your energy card and your probably realistically Buddy Puffin to be able to do that. Sometimes you're not going to be able to do that without the assistance of a Squawkabilly, so if you're having to play Squawkabilly, you're then having 2 relatively weak EX Pokemon on your board, and all of a sudden things do get a bit messy. So I think ultimately this isn't going to be worth playing in your deck because there's too many hoops you have to jump through to be able to get the benefit of playing it on turn 1. But regardless, it is an option. It is quite a cool way of being able to try and set up and try and, I guess, take advantage of all of the decks that want to go second, playing that Evo engine. You get to be a deck that wants to go first. But I just think it's going to be a little bit too complicated and have to jump through too many hoops to be able to get this off consistently and try and consistently have turn 2 stage 2s without having to play rare candy. I actually think arguably rare candy is more reliable than this because we have Arven and things like that anyway. So yeah, really, really cool card, but I don't think it's going to see any play. And similarly, I don't think there's any other. I guess Turbo Energize is another one that you could potentially use with this. Turbo Energize from turn 1 is interesting because your opponent, I guess, is rarely going to be able to knock this out on turn 2, or their first turn. So you could potentially get a double use of Turbo Energize off if you're able to find another one and attack. At that point you can attach a load of energy across a couple of turns. I guess it's the same argument for Evo, but a lot of the time you're evolving into basics that you're evolving into stage 1s that you want to make use of, things like Dracloak, so you don't necessarily want to Evo them again into Dragapults. So I think it's more of a card that you're going to double dip on with Turbo Energize, but then even so, I still think there's too many hoops to be able to get this into the active spot with the energy, with the Pokemon you want on the bench to be able to evolve or attach energy to, especially when you can't play a supporter other than Carmine. So yeah, not too powerful overall, I don't think. Unfortunately, Excadrill is pretty weak. It's just not going to be powerful enough. I was really hoping we were going to get a bit of a reprint of the 11th hour tackle one, but alas, we did not. There is the only reason I'm shouting this out is because this Conkeldurr, back when I was first getting into the game, I built a deck, back when I was first getting into going to tournaments, I guess, I got into the game about a year before this card came out. But this is I did try and build a Conkeldurr deck around this craftsmanship ability, which was terrible, but it is. I'm super pleased we've got the Conkeldurr again. Just for personal nostalgia, I guess. Mandy Buzz is interesting. It's got Hunt for Prey. Once during your turn, you may have your opponent reveal their hand. You can choose a basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less you find there and put it onto their bench. Again, potentially a control style card, but I don't think it's going to be reliable enough. Being able to see your opponent's hand is never is never a bad thing. It's never a mechanic that you should underestimate, because knowing what options your opponent has, knowing the availability of their resources, can dictate how you can play, and can mean that you are able to, I guess, abuse some things that they may not have access to. If they don't have access to energy, start targeting their energy. If they don't have access to any recovery, start targeting down some important parts of their board. So it is important for the control decks to see what their opponents are playing with, and being able to put a basic Pokemon onto the board that they don't want onto the board is great. It can be really annoying, but most of the time, if it's got 70 HP or less, they're probably going to want to evolve it into whatever. What they're probably going to want it in play so they can evolve it into whatever Pokemon they're attacking with or setting up anyway. So don't actually think it's going to be too powerful overall. Genesect EX, again, I think some people thought we were going to have Red Signal back. This is not Red Signal, this is Metal Signal. It says once during a turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 Metal Evolution Pokemon, reveal them and put them into your hand. This is very powerful for one archetype and one archetype alone, and that's Gholdengo. I think this is a great card. Just as a one-of in Gholdengo, turns your nest balls into essentially a Jack. Your nest ball becomes a Jack for turn, and it doesn't even use your supporter. You get to search out for 2 Gholdengos. Obviously, the your return on investment does get quite low quite quickly because you only have 4 evolution Pokemon in your deck most of the time in those Gholdengo decks, or 4 metal evolution Pokemon in your deck. But again, you could search out Sizzle and stuff like that as well. If you wanted to play the Sizzle style build of Gholdengo, I don't think that's the strongest one, but maybe there's argument to do that now that we have Genesect to search out the Sizzles a bit more reliably. But yeah, so the return on investment drops off on this card really, really quickly, but just the fact that you get to put your Gholdengos into play much more reliably is very powerful. Obviously, that then starts your draw engine, which is really good. It means that you can start trying to take some KOs as well. And similarly, if your opponent is knocking out a Genesect because it's weaker than a Gholdengo, you're completely fine with that. You've still got your draw engine, you've still got your attacker, all of that good stuff anyway. So yeah, I think it's easily a one-of. I don't think it's ever going to be more than a one-of. Maybe it doesn't actually quite see play, but I think it seems like a pretty good one-of in the Gholdengo deck. To be able to just nest ball, your nest ball turns into searching out for 2 Gholdengos that then draw you some cards that then start the whole bonus coin cycle going from there. So yeah, really, really cool stuff from the Genesect. Onto White Flare then. I think the first card, I guess, worth noting is Whimsicott. It's not super powerful. I don't think it's pretty weak. It does have Energy Gift that lets you search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon, attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. This, it's for a Grass Energy, so you have to be playing an element of Grass Energy in your deck already. So, yeah, kind of limited. I almost feel like Yanmega is better because you're able to pull 3 energy onto your board with Yanmega, then attack for 210, and then put the energy onto your bench. Yes, it has to be Grass Energy, but if you happen to play Grass with Whimsicott anyway, it's kind of the same thing. Embor has the Inferno Fandango ability. Embor, I feel like this ability is synonymous with Embor. I actually did a count of how many Embors have this ability yesterday, and over 50% of Embor cards ever printed have Inferno Fandango. So yeah, very synonymous with Embor. Basically, Rain Dance for Fire Energy. It lets you attach Fire Energy from your hand to your Pokemon as often as you like during your turn. We know Rain Dance can be powerful. We've got Baxcalibur in the format, which has been powerful in the past. I think overall this arguably is a better Baxcalibur because I think Fire is a bit more relevant than Water right now. But Baxcalibur does have access to Chien Pao, which lets you freely search for 2 energy per turn. So you're always able to keep the energy out of your deck and onto the board and try and, set them up. And not have to worry about playing a load of things like Vessel and stuff. So arguably this is better than Baxcalibur. Arguably this is worse than Baxcalibur. Overall, I think this is worse because the other thing we have right now is Ho-Oh plus Armor Rouge. And I think the Ho-Oh Armor Rouge combo is just a bit better. There's argument that maybe Embor is just better than the Ho-Oh Armor Rouge combo and you just play Embor with the exact same archetype. You play Embor with, the special energy, the prism energy, the luminous energy, and you do that instead of having to get a stage 1 and a basic into play and only being able to attach 2 energy per turn to it. So there is argument for that. One of the biggest reasons that this is better than so that hasn't happened with Baxcalibur. One of the biggest reasons that that hasn't happened with Baxcalibur is the fact that I think the basics, the Frigivaxes, are considerably worse. They've either got 60 HP or 2 retreat. Tepig has 70 HP and 1 retreat, so maybe this actually is a better Baxcalibur because your basics are better and therefore you're able to play this Rain Dance style deck similar to Ho-Oh Armor Rouge, but you're all in on Embor instead of that Ho-Oh Armor Rouge combo. So yeah, maybe it's a way of playing that deck. I'm not 100% sold yet, but I'll probably give it a go just again because from a nostalgia perspective, seeing Inferno Fandango back in the format is great. We've got Reshiram, which has a very similar attack to Zekrom. Blaze Burst does 130 damage and 50 more for each prize card your opponents take on. And instead of on Zekrom dealing 30 damage, which I don't think I mentioned when talking about Zekrom, but yeah, you do deal 30 damage to yourself when you use Zekrom's attack. In Reshiram's case, you discard an energy from this Pokemon. This is obviously all 3 of these EX Pokemon are making a bit of a nod or taking a nod back at their original prints back in Black and White and Noble Victories. Reshiram used to have to discard energy. Zekrom used to deal damage to itself, and Kyurem used to spread damage. So all of them are a bit of a nod back to their old former lives. Obviously, this is the exact same modifier as Zekrom, so we know this damage is good. We know the modifier is good. We know it can definitely ramp into damage in the late game. Obviously, we don't have as good a ways to be able to search out fire energy and attach fire energy as we do for lightning energy. We don't have the electric generator equivalent. We don't really have the equivalent for electric. So you are going to have to find a way of attaching energy consistently with this. Again, the idea is they're trying to push Embor Reshiram in the same way they're trying to push electric and Zekrom. So you can play it with Embor. And maybe if we turn in this Hoa Armourouge deck turns into an Embor deck instead, I can definitely see this being played as a one-of. Similarly, I can see this being played as a one-of in Charizard decks because it gives you type coverage and actually again becomes a better Charizard in the late game. So arguably you have your Charizard in the early game to whilst this Reshiram is ramping up where Charizard will do more damage. But as soon as the late game hits, you have a basic version of Charizard that also has type coverage to deal with a lot of the grass type Pokemon that people are trying to play to counter, things like Charizard itself, things like Grimmsnarl, even things like Zoroarch EX Index. So you have some type coverage there. It's basically like a Gouging Fire, but in the late game better. It's worse in the early game, but you have Charizard in the early game anyway. So yeah, I can definitely see this fitting as a one-of in Charizard decks as a finisher, which is crazy to say because Charizard is already such a good finisher Pokemon. It deals such good damage in the late game, but Reshiram just does even more. So yeah, don't think it's quite as good. Don't think it's going to hit quite the same heights as Zekrom, but do think it's definitely worth noting and could be a one-of going forward. Super disappointed in Keldeo. We had some really good Keldeos in the Black and White era, and this one I just think is really underwhelming. Gale Thrust only does 120 and it's for 2 energy. And then Sonic Edge is at least a wall breaker, which is always good to have. Keldeo is kind of known for being a bit of a wall breaker, so it is good to have maybe in some water decks going forward. It's going to be important to have just a way of being able to break through walls and get through opponents' effects. But right now, don't think it's too relevant. There's some brilliant art in this set, but I think the sets overall are quite weak. This is a card that's pretty interesting. Gelatin EX has the Sea Curse ability. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent can't play any tools or item cards from their hand, which is item lock and tool. Item lock and tool lock is basically item lock of the past, which was very, very powerful. And I think realistically, this is likely to have some level of impact. We obviously had the Gardevoir deck, the Gardevoir Banette deck, which was like a different way of playing Gardevoir. It did end up being its own deck, did end up having an impact. So I think this definitely could fall into a similar archetype where you've got Gardevoir being able to power this up, and this just sits in the active spot trying to be annoying, trying to disrupt the opponent. And you're playing a more passive strategy of Gardevoir rather than like the more aggressive attackers like Screamtail and Drifloon and stuff like that. The reason why I think Gardevoir is a good partner is because Power Press deals 80 damage for 2 energy, but if you have at least 2 extra energy attached, you do 160 instead. Obviously 140 for 60, 160 for 40. No, 160 for 4 energy is not particularly powerful. It's actually relatively low. A relatively low return on investment, but when your opponent is unable to play item cards or tool cards, just a consistent 160 every turn can start to ramp up quite quickly. You're still two-shotting everything, or two-shotting most things, I should say. Anything over 330, you're not two-shotting, but these Gardevoir decks can still easily play Monkey Dory and stuff like that anyway to try and get you over the line and to try and keep these Gelatins alive, which is important. This is another attacker that can use the ignition energy, because obviously the ignition energy would cover the colorless cost and the 2 additional cost for power press as well. So yeah, I could definitely see this being like a quad deck with ignition energy as well, and just maybe you'll have to just be dealing 80 to begin with, but on specific turns where you're going to try and get a knockout, you can attach an ignition and try and deal 160. I don't think you're going to be able to get across the line particularly easy in that case, which is why I think realistically it's probably going to be paired with Gardevoir. But yeah, I think this is a very, very powerful card. And similarly, Frillish. I think Frillish is actually arguably just as powerful, if not more powerful, because Sea Shadows deals 20 for 1 energy, and your opponent can't play items from their hand next turn. So yes, you have to attach a Psychic Energy, but this is essentially a Budew with a Vitality Band and a Bravery Charm on it already. Yes, you have 3 Retreat, which is kind of awkward, but you're a buffed Budew that you can buff even further. And again, you're able to stop, similarly to the Shuppet that was at least on a coin flip, but you would Shuppet to try and slow your opponent down before you got into your Banette and got into your reliable item lock. In the same way, Frillish kind of does the same thing. You have your item lock before you get into your super annoying item lock that's harder to deal with, arguably, because you can only deal with this by bossing your opponent's Pokemon up and stuff like that. So yeah, I think this is very, very powerful. Really excited to see how this makes it into, whether it makes it into Gardevoir or makes it into another archetype, an archetype of its own. It did remind me also, just talking about that the Whimsicott does have Wonder Cotton, which is essentially Poltergeist. Does 50 damage times the number of trainers in your opponent's hand. I probably didn't sell this card enough. Wonder Cotton having a 50 or Poltergeist with a 50x multiplier is very powerful. I just think right now there's not enough inter-synergy, but arguably you can start your turns off with Budew, then Wonder Cotton and try and take some KOs. So there is synergy there. I just don't think it's a powerful enough Pokemon on its own to be able to, you're more than likely going to get return KO'd, and you have to set up another stage 1 and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but I definitely shouldn't have just glossed over Wonder Cotton. Very powerful attack, worth keeping in mind for sure. I guess the Primal Wings Archeops, or the Archeops has a Primal Wings ability which forces evolved Pokemon back into the opponent's hand, but it has to be active, and again you have to get around this, quite honestly, this stupid fossil mechanic, so I don't think it's too powerful at all. Zoroarch is a really nice nod back to 2 very powerful Zoroarchs of the past. Mind Jack, dealing 30 damage times your number of your opponent's bench Pokemon, is pretty powerful. We've seen that attack be very good in the past. The fact it's only 1 energy is nice. The fact it's a Dark type is nice, because it means that you can actually quite easily one-shot a Gardevoir because you're playing Dark Energy. You don't quite get there without a little bit of extra damage, whether that's from, that Brave Bangle or a Monkey Dory or something like that. But you can be one-shotting a Gardevoir with this, which is nice. And then similarly, Foul Play for 3 energy, or again, an Ignition energy, lets you choose when your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. We know things like Mew have been used in the past to be able to do that. So this can be a really powerful effect. I think it's really important to keep in mind. Obviously, it's a real shame that this can't evolve from the End Zoroarch or End Zorua, because I think this would be a brilliant inclusion to almost any End Zoroarch deck, or any deck that plays End Zoroarch as their draw engine. And I actually think that's probably going to be what limits this card. We do have the Zoroarch from Shrouded Fable, which deals 60 damage times the number of EXs and GXs, or Rulebox Pokemon in play. It's EXs and V Pokemon, actually, I think. But either way, it's the 60 times the number of Rulebox Pokemon, so we have a couple of good Zoroarchs, but I think ultimately it's probably not going to be enough to make a full deck around Zoroarch. But it would have been really cool if this was able to be played with the End Zoroarch cards, because I think then this actually would be pretty powerful as a one-of in that deck. Penultimate card I think we're going to be talking about is Hydragon. Hydragon has the Greedy Eater ability. So as if your opponent's basic Pokemon is knocked out by damage from this Pokemon's attacks, you take 1 more prize card for that knockout. So having the Amp You Very Much effect on your for free on an ability, just for basics, but still is very powerful. Unfortunately, Dark Bite costs 5 energy to use. It does 200 damage, and your Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. Well, for the most part, you really want to be trying to knock out basic Pokemon with this. The idea is definitely going to be trying to knock out, a Squawkabilly, a Pheasantipity, a Melo X, things like that, trying to just win the game in 2 attacks. But 5 energy is just way too much energy to be able to reliably do that. However, Hydragon can copy some tool cards from, or some of the TM cards, some of the attacks from the TM cards, and still get the benefit of Greedy Eater from what it's been ruled so far, which would make a lot of sense. It's how all of these other effects have worked in the past, which is really powerful. The two that you can use are Blindside and Crisis Punch. So Blindside deals 100 damage for 3 colorless energy to any Pokemon that has damage counters on it already. So all you need to do is maybe put some Monkey Dory damage on, or some Frostlass damage on, or anything like that. And then you can try and snipe a low HP 1 prize Pokemon to take 2 prizes on one of those. Again, you're probably not going to be able to do the 2 3 prize turns with Blindside because it only deals 100 damage, but maybe after a few turns of Monkey Dory and Frostlass damage, you are able to snipe, again, a Squawkabilly, a Pheasantipity, a Mew with the Blindside TM and take 3 prizes, which is really powerful. Similarly, Crisis Punch can only be used when your opponent has 1 prize left, but you can potentially manipulate that with things like Dusknoir. Again, also setting up the using the Dusknoir to set up damage means that you may be able to get to Blindside quicker, or you may be able to get over the line with Crisis Punch. Crisis Punch obviously deals 280 damage for a single for a single attachment with that Ignition Energy. Another fantastic user of Ignition Energy, by the way, because both Blindside and Crisis Punch can use that, and you're able to deal 280 damage and try and take 3 prizes in one shot. So yeah, very, very powerful. I think the Dark Bite is something you should just completely avoid, but Blindside and Crisis Punch could be really good for Hydragon alongside some spread damage to be able to Greedy Eater some extra prizes and try and, I guess, take 2 or 3 knockouts and win the game from there. Yeah, I think this is really cool. Arguably, also, you do have the Terra Hydragon as well, which could provide some additional support or additional attacking options. Yes, you don't get the benefit from Greedy Eater, but maybe you use the Terra Hydragon to take your first couple of prizes, or set things up ready for, with that Obsidian attack, set things up ready for the Technical Machine Blindside to then take the KOs with Hydragon. So yeah, very, very cool combo. I'm pretty sure, I don't necessarily know whether it's going to push Hydragon over the line of being a good deck, but I think it's definitely an upgrade to potentially that Hydragon deck, or could become a deck on its own, to be honest. Kling Klang was super disappointing. Everyone was hoping for something similar to the Plasma Kling Klang, but actually this just reduces the damage of the damage your Pokemon take if they have any metal energy attached to them. Similarly, I think some people were kind of hoping for a Durant reprint from Noble Victories, but instead we just got Bite Together, which deals 40 if you've got another Durant on the bench. Not too exciting. Finally, the final card I want to talk about today then is Buffant EX, 220 HP basic Pokemon with the Buffer ability that says this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. So after the ability, you've effectively got 250 HP. If you stick a Bravery Charm on this, you have 300 HP. And then if you have 2 of the single prize Buffalants, unfortunately this doesn't trigger the Stellar Crown's Buffalant's ability, but if you have 2 other single prize Buffalants on the board, you then get another minus 60, so you're effectively 360 HP to be able to one-shot this in one attack, and you're reducing damage by 90, so any attacks that do less than 90 or less than 100 are going to be completely ignored, and to be able to one-shot this, your opponent's going to have to do 360 damage. That's not bad, that's pretty tanky. Yes, obviously there's ways of being able to get around the different abilities, and we've got the Tool Scrapper and all of this kind of stuff, but just having that alone is very, very annoying to have to get over. And then Gold Breaker for 3 colorless energy deals 100 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is an EX, it's 100 more. So a clean 200 damage to EXs is not bad. 100 damage to non-EXs isn't great. You're only really knocking out basics and stage 1s. But again, it's fine. It's a decent amount of damage. Arguably, you could potentially play some kind of damage mods in this to get over the line against some of the Pokemon that you're not quite one-shotting. But just the fact that you have so much HP and you can penny this back up after it's taken a hit and stuff like that, I could easily see like a quad Buffalant deck, or an 8 Buffalant deck being a deck. Maybe even playing this with like multiple Monkey Dories to take a hit and then move all the damage off, similar to some Blissey decks sometimes used to do. So yeah, I think this Buffant is very, very powerful, or could be very powerful, could be very tanky. I'm just not sure whether the damage is there. And the acceleration, I'm not 100% sure how we're accelerating. Maybe we're using Turbo Energize on these as well, to be able to set them up. But yeah, something speaks to me about this Buffant. Something says to me, this is, this has potential. This could be a really annoying deck for your opponent have to deal with. Buffant up turn after turn after turn that has 360 damage and health and reduces 90 damage. Could be quite annoying to deal with. We do have a lot of one-shot in the format right now, I guess. But yeah, similarly, there's a lot of decks that just start off by dealing 180 or start off by dealing 200, 210, and all of a sudden that damage is massively reduced, especially when you then get a turn to maybe heal the damage off with Monkey Dory or items and stuff like that. So yeah, Buffant looks really cool. Think it could be quite boring, but still think it looks like quite an interesting archetype of, I guess, working out ways to try and keep these Buffants alive. But yeah, both of these sets, I think, are largely underwhelming. I don't like the only insta pickup is going to be this Zekrom for the Miraidon decks, but I don't hate that. I don't mind just a few additional cards that make decks a bit better. Prism Energy, Ignition Energy, Hilda, all of these kinds of cards, Tool Scrapper. I don't mind every deck just getting a buff now and again rather than just introducing a whole heap of new archetypes into the format. Trying to just make all of our decks better is quite cool. So yeah, going to be really interesting to see how this shapes out ready for Worlds. As we did with Destined Rivals, we're going to have plenty of black and white content. We're going to have set reviews, going to have early battles, all of that good stuff, and lots of guides ready for the World Championships as well. So yeah, really looking forward to jumping straight into it. We're basically holding off just for NAIC, which is about a week away, and once we've had NAIC, it's going to be straight into the Black Bolt and White Flare content, which is really exciting. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I've been Jack from Omnipoke, and I look forward to seeing you guys in another video soon. Cheers, everybody.